I was 18. I just moved out of the house, and I was like, I'm not gonna go to college. Like, I don't have a pathway to citizenship. I feel like all my friends are doing things,
Mhm.
and I'm such a loser. Um, and somewhere along the way, like this girl just said, you're very funny. Like, you're one of the funniest people I've ever met. You try doing something. And then I realized, like, when I was a kid, most kids would get up early to watch Saturday morning cartoons. I would
Yeah.
I would stay up late to watch Comedy Central Presents. Like on Friday nights, like they'd have two
Yeah.
comedians, 30 minutes. So that was my like that night I was just like, you know what? If if my friends are going to school and it's gonna take them like 4 to 6 years to finish, I'm gonna spend the next 6 years doing stand-up comedy, and that's gonna be my school. I'm gonna learn everything about it. I'm gonna watch everybody's specials. And yo, no lie,
Wow.
till this day, I watch comedy like it's a football reel. Like,
What is going on, everyone? I'm your host, Kevin Munoz. You're listening to the Leo podcast, where we talk about various educational topics, especially those impacting the Latin American community. This is today's free episode. If you want early access to episodes and bonus episodes, you can find that right now on our patreon.com/latinamericaneo. And if not, then enjoy this one. In today's episode, I had the pleasure to speak with stand-up comedian and TikTok content creator Che Guerrero, who has been facing his undocumented problem for 30 years. He does stand-up and puts out content mainly through TikTok about being undocumented, and has recently released his own podcast called Myundocumentedasspodcast, where he talks to other undocumented people about their personal struggles with the immigration system in a funny, revealing, and humanizing way. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. I'm finally happy that we're putting this together, and I'm glad that you accepted my invitation to be on here as well. I'm so interested in hearing about um, how like TikTok has elevated like your content, and specifically content that is for the undocumented community, because I don't really see many undocumented folks in content creation in general, let alone on TikTok. And I don't know if that's like my algorithm but anytime I see like a Latino content creator, I'm just like, I'm like, click, click, click,
oh,
like,
same here,
yeah,
same
I'm just
here.
like,
Yeah,
I don't care what it is. Like, oh, I'm gonna hit like,
yeah.
um,
I just had my heart broken. You know the girl on TikTok that like destroys men. I thought she
yes,
was
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. Like they send stuff to her, and she's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get him
yeah,
today. Yeah.
yeah. With the I thought she was Hispanic. I'm like, oh, she's Samoan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought she was
Oh, I
Hispanic. I
didn't
thought she
know
was
that.
part of our
Yeah,
team. I was like, yeah, Latino team
yeah.
on TikTok, but nah, she's great.
Right. Damn, that's
I
wild.
do the same thing. I follow every Hispanic person I can find on there. But for me, it's been honestly, it's been an unexpected blessing, really,
Yeah.
because when I first started on TikTok, I was kind of just putting out a lot of junk, like just a lot of like jokes and trying to be like, man, relationships be like this. But then one TikTok that I did it about like how hard it is to go to college when you're undocumented, and that surprisingly like did fairly well. And then I was like, you know what, let me put out another one like this and see what happens. And I was
Right.
honestly, TikTok was the first time I even put together in my head that there is an undocumented community. That when you hear there's
Yeah.
11 million of us, you don't think that's 11 million people plus their friends and family who know them. You know what I mean? That's
That's true.
easily like 50,
Yeah.
60 million people. That's a big percentage
Yeah.
of the country affected by this. So, one of the biggest things is like I didn't know who I was talking to when I first started doing my TikToks. That's why I
Mm.
called it my undocumented ass. So it was supposed to be like a joke, like we'd be like, "Oh, my dumb ass didn't know that." So I did
My
like my
undocumented ass.
undocumented ass to make it about myself. So then whoever was laughing at the joke, they would be like, "Hey, this happened to me too," and I could be like, "Oh, cool! Like I'm so happy." That's from my stand-up years.
Yeah.
I've done stand-up comedy since I was 18. So one thing that I learned from stand-up very quickly is when you do a joke, it's easier to say, "I thought this" or "I did this," because if you say something like hey, don't y'all like feet? And the audience is like, no, that's just you. You know what I mean?
Say,
Like,
oh, just me, like no one
yeah,
else.
no one else. But when you say, hey, I like this, the audience is like, all right, we're
Yeah.
talking about you. What's going on with you? So that's when I started doing my TikToks like that. And honestly, like I've been uh finding a lot of people that have been very vocal, and it's really crazy because I don't know how you grew up, but I grew up kind of like undocumented. You have to be very quiet. I wasn't very
Oh yeah.
vocal, so I didn't know that there were programs, organizations. I didn't know there were people marching the streets for our rights. So it wasn't until I was on TikTok and the algorithm was like, hey, check out this undocumented person who's making clothing, check out this undocumented person who's a lawyer,
Right.
who's a therapist, that I was like, oh man, this is beautiful. Like so many survivor stories, because these are also stories of survivors,
Yeah.
and it became a very rewarding experience, and it's all I've ever wanted to do since I realized, like, that my voice could actually, be important to somebody.
Wow, that's amazing. No, I'm absolutely with you on that. Especially finding the community. It's so surprising always, like seeing how much support you get from strangers. Like I always tell that to people, right? Like you never would expect it. Um, but we're here to talk about like your survival story, right, and your journey. And I just want to know how you even came about doing stand up first, right? And then going into content creating on TikTok. So how did like I assume you weren't in like school like, oh, I'm gonna be like a TikToker. Like I don't even that wasn't
No,
even around.
no,
You know what
I
I
was
mean?
not.
Like
Yeah, it's
like
5 years
so
ago, so
yeah,
definitely
that's
not. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So I want to know like what it was your journey as an undocumented person as well.
Yeah.
And you using comedy to really voice a community too, like all the things that we have to deal with, and mix that with comedy is what I love about you, because you do that so well. And you always see your content makes me laugh, even though it's like a serious like topic.
I mean, that's our people, man. Like humor has always been part of my life, like my grandmother, I just, in talking to her recently, I really found out, like, during the Trujillo dictatorship of the Dominican Republic, like he was born in 1934. So
Mm.
this was like 2 years, 3 years after Trujillo came into power. So most of her, like up until her 30s, she grew up under this dictatorship. And my grandmother has such an amazing sense of humor, like about the time and the atrocity that she's told me. She still says it with like a joke. And I realized that a lot of like my survival mechanism of humor comes from my grandma. Like my grandma, super funny, super sarcastic, like just great. And that's just kind of how I grew up. I came to this country when I was 6 because my mother was trying to escape my abusive father in the Dominican Republic, and she felt like she couldn't go to anyone for help, so she just had to escape.
Yeah.
So growing up, I always used humor as a way to kind of get people not to ask me too many questions. You know what I mean? Because my thing was like always make people laugh, and then you can kind of like deviate from what you were originally talking about. I always knew, you make people laugh, you can make friends with anyone. They don't ask you too many questions about where you're from or what you did. Like, this guy's hilarious. Who cares? You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? We got a clown in the house. Who cares?
Right, right.
So that kind of became my survival mechanism. And then when I was 18, I moved out of the house. I just couldn't. I had a lot of issues at home, and that was very scary because it's funny. Like I'm reading this great book right now called "The Distance Between Us." And in it, it's the first time I ever read a book where like an immigrant and an undocumented person talks about having a very shitty mother and
Mm.
father. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
it's always these stories that are painted of, oh, the parents came here for a better life, and they work so hard for their kids. Sometimes drug addicts come here too, and they're very shitty people. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
these terrible parents, and it's just also like this undocumented situation, and it just felt like it was just so chaotic. Like I just felt like I couldn't complain about it because you automatically get the thing where you're like, oh well, your parents came here, so
Like
you
they
should be
sacrificed
thankful.
everything for you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, man, but I can't even talk about how horrible they are at all. So it was very
Yeah.
conflicting, and I use humor a lot to deal with that. Like, so I moved out of the house when I was 18, and I
Wow.
was living on my own in New York City. That's where I grew up, but
Wow.
then I had like moved out, so I was like, I'm gonna go, and that's it's crazy how kids don't realize how much danger they're putting themselves into. Like, because it was, if I look back now, sometimes I have to be, I have to be kinder to myself, because a lot of times you realize, like, yo, yeah, I was living in survival mode
Yeah.
and I wasn't aware of everything that I was doing. So I
You
left the
just
house at
yeah.
18, and I started, like, working, like, little jobs that I could. And really it wasn't even expected. I was just talking to a girlfriend over the phone, and she made a comment. I was 18. I just moved out of the house, and I was like, I'm not gonna go to college. Like, I don't have a pathway to citizenship. I feel like all my friends are doing things,
Mhm.
and I'm such a loser. And somewhere along the way, like, this girl just said, you're very funny. Like, you're one of the funniest people I've ever met. You try doing something. And then I realized, like, when I was a kid, most kids would get up early to watch Saturday morning cartoons. I would
Yeah.
I would stay up late to watch Comedy Central Presents. Like, on Friday nights, like, they would have two
Yeah.
comedians, 30 minutes. So that was my, like, that night I was just like, you know what? If my friends are going to school and it's gonna take them like 4 to 6 years to finish, I'm gonna spend the next 6 years doing stand-up comedy, and that's gonna be my school. I'm gonna learn everything about it. I'm gonna watch everybody's specials. And yo, no lie,
Wow.
till this day, I watch comedy like it's a football reel. Like, I watch everybody's stand-up special on Netflix. I can tell you what's shitty about them, what's good. Like, I know what everybody talks about, so I don't talk about the same crap. Like, I'm just, like, hyper focused about comedy.
Yeah,
So when
yeah.
I started at 18, I started off very scared, because, like, I was funny, but I didn't want to reveal too much about myself still, like, I was like,
Like your status, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
a lot of my first jokes were very, like, sex. Let's talk about, like, my job. And I would lie and say I was born in Queens. I would get bullshit lies during my act.
What were you? Where were you working at that time?
Oh man, I have, like, the craziest. So I started comedy, no lie, like, the same week that Pete Davidson and Michael Che started comedy. Like, I have those
No
guys' numbers
way.
on my phone in New York City. Like, we were 18, 19-year-old kids starting
What?
stand-up comedy. Yeah, they had no idea I was undocumented. It was crazy, man. I got to work with a lot of big people now.
That's insane. That is
Yeah.
actually insane.
I started I did it at the New York Comedy Club. I did the
Mm-hmm.
Stand. I did Caroline's. I did Broadway. I did Eastville Comedy Club. Man, I
Wow.
was for 6 years. I was a regular at all these other than the Cellar, like the biggest comedy club in the country. I hit every single comedy club in New York City, every stage, every off Broadway stage. Man, for like 10 years, I was in New York City grinding it out,
Wow,
undocumented,
you
just
were
not
really
letting it.
doing that. That's
I was,
insane. So,
yeah.
because some people just say they're gonna do something, but you were really about it. Like,
Nah, man. Like, I got, like, Pete Davidson, Michael Che, Ali Wong, Chris DeStefano, all these people's phone numbers
wow.
who went on to do great things. Like, I was there. You know what I mean? And what's crazy about that was it became like, what broke my heart about that time was that I realized that it was not just about talent, that so much race and status was against me, that, like,
Wow.
that was what kind of broke my heart and almost broke me for a little while,
Wow.
because, like um like, I'll give you, like, a perfect example of something that happened to me that was kind of like, it just, it kind of put everything into perspective. So at
Yeah.
one point I was super hot, right? I was still undocumented, but I was super hot. Everybody was, some people were starting to say my name around New York City, right? So at one point, the biggest TV show on MTV, called The Guy Code. I don't know if you remember that
Oh
show.
yeah, I watched. I used to watch Guy Code.
P. Davidson, Michael Che, Little
Yeah.
Rel,
Yeah.
Charlemagne the God, all these dudes were on that show, right?
Yep. Yep.
So New York City, like, so MTV goes, yo, season three's coming up of Guy Code, and we have no Latinx people on the show. We should get a Latinx person on the show, right? So they go bet. So they do a catacall all around the country. They do New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta. Yo, we're looking for a Latinx dude to put on Guy Code, right?
You're like, yo, that's
So,
me. Like.
I didn't even think about it, right? But
Okay. Okay.
I won't give names, but the person who was, like, the producer of the show knew me. She knew that my name was coming up in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and mind you, like I'm putting all my eggs in this basket because I'm undocumented. So I'm like, this is it. This is what I need. I need to make this money so I can get a lawyer. So maybe they can, you know what I mean? So I need this.
You already got it. You got the gears going in your head.
I'm thinking this is gonna be the movie, you know what I mean? So I got all this thing going, right? So she tells me, hey, come in tomorrow and audition for Geico, right? I come in the next day, I'm 21, 22 at the time. No, maybe I was like, yeah, 22. Yeah, 22 at the time, 34 now. So, I seem like an old man talking about this, but
Still
no,
young,
so I come
man.
in, and there's like 6, 7 people in the room, right? 6, 7 people in the room. And they go, all right. So they sent me like a thing the night before. They were like, these are these topic ideas and come up with jokes, right? One of them was farts. The topic was just farts, right? And I said something along the lines of like, for a man, because this is Geico, for a guy, farts is actually how we let you know about our emotions inside. Like you gotta listen for a man's fart. Like if a man comes home and his fart is, that means he had a hard day. Like talk to him. Don't let him go to the shed by himself. He's gonna kill himself. Listen to those fart noises. And no lie, 8 people in that room are laughing. They're having a great time.
That's great. Yeah.
They're like, Che, what do you do on a first date? And I'm like, you know what, hey ladies, guys, you know what you need to do on the first date with a girl? You need to find something to hate about someone else. And I'm doing these jokes. Like when you're on a date, you should be like, man, isn't that waiter a piece of shit? And you both start talking about how much you hate the waiter. Bam. Now you guys have something in common, So I'm doing all these jokes. They're laughing. I'm having a great time during this audition. I forget it's an audition. I'm having such a fun time making these people laugh, right?
Yeah.
So
how could this possibly go? Like, how could this turn? I don't see. Right? I don't see a negative here.
Right. So I leave MTV, thinking to myself, you know what? No matter what, I had a great audition, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, no lie, maybe like a day or two later, right? I'm in New York City. I get a phone call from my boy in Los Angeles, right? His name is Eric. He goes, yo, man, you're never gonna believe this. And I go, what? He goes, I went today to the audition for Guy Court in Los Angeles, and they said that they met this kid yesterday from New York City. My name used to be Miguel. Named Miguel, that they are fucking in love with, that they can't wait to get you on the show. And I was like, Eric, please stop. Dude, this is the biggest show on MTV right now. This is Pete Davidson. This is Michael. These are these people, man. Don't tell me that I got this. And he's like, dude, my agent told me they're looking at you. Bro, wow. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna chill.
How'd you feel at that moment? Like,
I felt like honestly, like I never actually talked about this on this perspective, but no lie, as an undocumented person at the time, I thought like, yo, I did it.
This is it, right?
I did it. Like
that's a this is it moment. Like
my lies to people, like this is all gonna pay off for something, because I had to at comedy clubs and stuff like that.
I gotcha.
I can't let people know my status. Like I was going on the road with these comedians, but I couldn't drive, so I was like, why don't you guys drive and I'll put in $100 for gas. I was being extra generous so people won't realize that I just can't drive.
That's crazy. Wow,
bro. Like I'm so excited, right? I'm like, yo, this phone call is gonna come any day now. A month goes by. 2 months goes by. Finally, summer hits. It goes, season 3 of Geico premiering September 19th. And I'm like,
what? You're like, did I miss a call or something? Like...
Yeah, did I not check I was checking my email every day for 3. Bro, the new season premieres. Christmas comes around. Every comedy club in New York City starts to do Christmas parties. Like, hey, if you're a comedian that works here, come on down, drink for free, eat for free. We have a big show. It becomes like a giant party, right? And sometimes you feel so cool because you're like, yo, I'm going to go to Caroline's. I'm going to go to Broadway's. I'm a regular here. I'm going to get drunk all week, right? It becomes like
comedy bar hop.
Comedy bar, because for the first time in a year, you feel like you're a king. Like these comedy clubs finally respect me and they're going to feed me. This is great, right? So I go to the party at the Stand. The Stand is like this new, edgy, trendy comedy club. Like all the edgy comedians are there. Like, Bill Burr's there all the time. Joe DeRosa, all these, edgy ass comedians, right? The woman who's the producer who brought me into the room, right? She's at this party and she's drinking. She's drunk. She's doing her thing. And, I finally had the courage, finally after a few drinks that I finally went up to her and I went, hey, listen, can I have a moment of your time? And she goes, yeah, absolutely. I go, listen, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but my buddy from New York told me, I'm from LA, told me that you guys liked me at the audition, that you were going to get me on MTV's Guy Code. What happened? And she goes, we did love you. We thought you were perfect. We were actually going to call you that day, But the morning before we called you, we had one more focus group with a bunch of college frat boys, that was their typical demographic for the show. You know, they wanted to be like, hey, these are some episodes we shot. What do you guys think of the new season coming along so well before we add anybody else? And she goes, because nobody complained that there was no Latinx act, they cut the idea of adding you to the show.
They just cut the idea?
Yeah. So you understand, like, they brought me in because I was Hispanic. I blew them out of the water to the point that my name was going around all the MTV circuit. And then because 5 white guys who watched the show never mentioned the fact that they didn't see a Hispanic guy in there, they cut my whole everything from me. Right? And then my stupid ass was like, well, I'll just work harder next time. Instead of realizing, no, you dumbass. They literally, like, this was the opportunity that made, you know, and I go back, this was the thing that made Pete Davidson. It was the thing that made Michael Che, you know, and they weren't asked, oh, well, you know, we don't need a black guy or we don't need another white guy, you know, but we're Hispanics, we're Latinos, you know, it's so easy just to say to us, well, we don't need you in a room.
Yeah, because they don't have anyone like on the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that looks like us and represent us, and that's like a huge systematic thing. That's insane that they would just because no one spoke up, and then they're like, we'll cut you. Like we'll cut that act. I mean, at that moment when you were speaking to her, you said your initial reaction was like, oh, I guess I just have to work harder.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was very stupid. I mean, not to realize that, like, you know.
But I mean, you were like 21, right? Like, what were you, like 21, 22 at that time?
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to the Leo Podcast. I'm Kevin Munoz. Support for today's episode comes from my Patreons. If you enjoy the show and are looking for bonus content and to further support the show, then head on over to patreon.com/latinamericaneo or visit my website, latinamericaneo.org, to join the growing Leo Podcast community. Because the learning doesn't stop with this episode. There's also some sick merch on my website, everything from shirts, coffee mugs, and tote bags. All info will be at the bottom in the show notes. Now let's get back to today's episode.
And it's not even about working harder. You know, it's the thing that I've actually realized in my whole career is that it's just something about being the Hispanic in the room that makes people like not think about you. You know, it's so weird. Like us Hispanic people feel like we have to just really, like, we're not in white people's heads when thinking about things, you know? So it just became like, I need to work harder, became like almost a sick thing, because then I got so obsessed with comedy and then I thought I wasn't good enough. And I was like, how am I not able to get on MTV? Like, but then here's the thing that I wanted to say. The thing that hurt the most, that took a long time to realize, is that, like, they found the funniest guy they could find. Do you understand? Like, they found the funniest guy. They bragged about this guy. They were in love with this guy. But then my race made them just retract everything they felt about me, you know?
Yeah.
And that hurt so much. And it took me years. Like, I really, like, you know, a lot of people, and this goes back to the TikTok thing, a lot of people go like, you know, it wasn't until 5 years ago that I started talking about, you know, being undocumented on stage for the first time, you know, because I needed to really learn very in the worst possible ways that I was a coon. I'll admit it fully. You know, I was undocumented, so I wanted white people to like me, and I wanted the industry to think that I was the perfect little, you know, Hispanic comedian, that I was basically like selling myself for a buck, you know, doing all
not
these
valuing racist, like, you know, your worth, right?
Yeah, not valuing my worth, not respecting my community, you know, and it became, you know, it became very insidious, and that's the kind of thing that, like, you know, I think a lot of people. I've been noticing this a lot too. Like, I've been reading, like, seeing a lot of books about like undocumented people who are like, I worked on Wall Street undocumented, and there's a lot of like,
I hate
like
that
capitalist undocumented
I hate
people.
that
You know what
mindset
I mean?
of like, if I did it, like, you can do it too. And it's just like, listen, you your journey is so much different than like
Yeah.
our journeys are so different. It's just like you can't just say that to someone. Like,
Yeah. And that was the maddening thing. Like literally after MTV, I literally like was almost obsessed with the fact that my life was gonna change in this big dramatic entertainment way, you know? And
yeah.
it was really, dude, it was very, very yeah, it was bad. It took me 5 years. It took me up until 5 years ago to finally break out of that and realize like, you know, I serve a purpose, you know, my comedy serves a purpose, and my community like doesn't make me feel as like, you know, crazy about where I belong, you know? Because that's the
Yeah.
thing, those PWIs, you know, predominantly white institutions, man, they really make you feel crazy. Like, you
Hmm.
know, am I good enough? Do I belong here? You know, can I be thrown out at any moment? You know, but being able to like do things on TikTok about being undocumented,
Yeah.
and my community is like, yo, we're here, man. We like what you're doing. You know, not every joke's a hit, but we like what you're doing. You know, like,
But we love you.
we love you, man. You're
We
not
love
every
the
joke.
guy making the joke.
You know,
So
that's a different world. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I wanted to also touch on, you said you started then talking about your status openly like 5 years ago. How was that received? Was that during stand up? Was that at like at a club? And how was getting gigs doing that type of comedy? Like, was that any? Did you see any difference from getting gigs from previous what you were doing before to now shifting it to like undocumented, right?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm the perfect example for this. You know, to tell people like, if you start anything young, it's really hard to break out of that mold. You know, so it's very difficult. It's very scary. You know, so when I started at 18.
Right.
That's very young to get up on stage. And comedy club owners, you know, I don't know what the exact number is. I'm making up this number, so don't quote me. But comedy club owners are about 90% white. My experience, the major comedy club chains in this country are like the Improv, Bonkers, the Funny Bone. Those are like chains that are like, you know, like
Okay.
McDonald's of comedy. Like you go to
Gotcha.
different cities in Ohio, and they have like a Funny Bone in every city, and that's like their comedy McDonald's. You know, all those chains are owned by white men or white women,
Mm.
right? So when I started off as a kid, I was the coon Hispanic who was very down the middle. You know, like I said, Uber jokes, sex jokes, all this stuff. So in 2015, I made the jump to go from being a part-time comedian to being a full-time comedian, right? This was like I was gonna call every club that I knew. I was gonna hit
Mm.
the road. You know, I had a driver's license and temporary status at the time, so I could do a little bit more. And I was like,
Okay.
while I have this temporary situation, I'm gonna push my career as far as I could. Because you know, as I don't know, you know, undocumented people, the one thing that I found is that we always like there's always that lull in our life when we're like, you know, underdocumented, undocumented, and then we make like a dash to the
Oh
finish line
yeah.
where we get some kind of status.
Very resilient, right? We got to take advantage of the very little that we're given.
Exactly. So I sprinted. So this is what happened. So like in 2015, I quit my job and I did comedy on the road. And doing stand-up comedy, I can show you my income tax. I made $34,000 in a year doing comedy. That's clubs, selling t-shirts, like doing jokes about Uber, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then I got into a situation where I left New York City because I was doing comedy in New York City, and I got offered a contract out in Indianapolis to be out there, work out there, do comedy out there, right? But it was a very weird time because I moved literally a month before Donald Trump picked Mike Pence to be his running mate, which was Indiana. Literally, Donald
Wow.
Trump had his rally with Mike Pence across the street from where I moved in Indianapolis. I moved across the street a month before to a place that was like where they do their state fair every year. It just happened to be. And I literally saw Donald Trump walking in with Mike Pence from my apartment building. And I thought to myself, I could shoot him. Like nobody knows I'm here. Like nobody knows I'm up here. Nobody came to check these. I was so weird, dude. I was like, this is so weird that I'm here right now a month before, right? So whatever. So what happened was I went out there to work with these
What?
white guys, right? And these white guys that I went out to work out there with, um, were starting to show that they were for Trump, and I didn't know that one, because Trump
Okay.
really changed everything.
You start seeing the signs, and you're kind of like, oh, that's a little
Yeah,
weird, but I'll let that
okay.
one slide, and then the next one's like, all right, yeah, I'm definitely in danger.
Now we're
Like,
getting fucking trouble, right?
yeah.
So so while I was out there, I was with my new partner. We've been together since then. She's a white woman, my first ever white partner, and my white girlfriend. This is it's all just so crazy, she was sort of pushing me for a while. She's like, you need to start being a lot more honest about being, undocumented. Like, I think this whole, I was born in Queens, and this is all bullshit. Like, she was like, you're lying to people, and it's just not right. You're more interesting. You've gone through this rough life, and I was, a white person who's grown up in America their whole life, and she's like a liberal. It's very easy for her to be like, speak your truth, baby. But for
Yeah.
an undocumented person, like, my truth will get me deported. Like,
Yeah, it's just like I'll be speaking my truth, just not over here anymore.
now you have
Like,
to throw a phone in the glass ceiling as I was speaking my truth. But she was like,
right.
and then and we moved out to Indianapolis together, right? And she, as a white person, she was a white whisperer. She was like, hey, these white boys are fucking racist. These white boys are this. These white boys are that. And I started to realize, like, yo, my girlfriend's right. Like I hang out with a lot of racist white men because I'm fun, because I was at that point almost an alcoholic. It was almost like this. They were, they liked this buffoon that I was, and so in 2016, like a few months before Trump, finally got elected, I told my partner, I was like, yo, let's get out of Indianapolis and let's go to Philly. Like her sister was starting to work in Philly. So I was like, yo, your sister needs roommates. Let's go to Philly. It's close to New York City, and it feels like it's a better city. So I came out here to Philly, and Philly was the best decision I ever made, because after that racist thing happened, where like I found out that a lot of my friends were Trump supporters and all this evil shit, I was like, I can no longer lie and get people to like me through this lie, because it's attracting the wrong kind of people.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's
And
what came with it, right?
yeah, these Trump supporter racists, and the way I was presenting myself. So the next year, I started to write more jokes about being undocumented, and I was very proud of my comedy. And again, we go back to white men after Trump wins.
Mm-hmm.
They start to do this thing to me where they blackball me. They don't return my emails anymore. Once they start seeing that my act, because the year before my act was like, man, you ever fuck a girl in the butt? I'm sorry, can you like curse on this, whatever? But
Oh
anyways,
yeah, no, you go,
yeah.
you do whatever.
And then the next year I come back, it's like, yo, you ever, what's tough about growing up undocumented? And the audience is like, we're white conservatives. We don't want to hear, even if this is comedy, you are an undocumented person bragging about it. Like, we don't like that. So
Right.
I went in 2015 making $34,000 to 2016. I made $11,000 doing comedy. Same clubs
Wow.
emailing them, but all they had to do was not return my emails, not return them. And it became like this. It really took me a long time to realize what was happening. It was my act. It was me. It was my confidence. It was my just everything that I wanted to be. These white comedy club owners were like, this guy's not fun anymore. I wasn't. That's how that is. As soon as you're political as a person of color, you're not fun anymore. That's how white people get you. They go, you're not fun anymore. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, you met me when I was 18 and I wasn't reading books. I was just trying to impress you white racists. And now that I got no knowledge in my head, now you don't even want me on your stage.
Yeah, they're like, oh no, he's self-aware. Like,
That becomes a problem. Becoming self-aware it's a very big problem.
oh my god, wow. That's why I asked, because I was interested to see if you started getting less gigs when you started doing like an undocumented like content, and that seems like what happened. And obviously you could see that through the like less money you were making. And you were supporting yourself? That was what you were using to support yourself, right?
Yeah.
So did
my partner? Yeah.
Right? Did you have to like? I mean, you obviously stayed true to your content, and like, how did you keep like thriving even after coming to that realization that I'm now going to be making less, but I'm staying true to myself, right?
Honestly, like it's all about the partner, man. It's all about my partner. I owe her the world. She was like, you're good. She's like, the problem is that like it's not going to be easy for you. It's you talk a lot about, race and relationships in a way that a lot of cis men don't talk about. You're very vulnerable, and my partner is at least kind enough. She has a great ear for music, so this is why, like, and actually when we were in New York City for that one year, like, she moved in with me and she saw my world where I was like hanging out with all these celebrities, and she's like, you belong here. Like, you belong here, babe. Like, you're good. So she was very much like, when she saw that my comedy was taking a different turn and that it was hurting me financially, she was like, I'm gonna get back to work, because she was staying at home, and she got back to
Yeah.
work, and she allowed me to, just start doing improv, something I've never done before.
Oh,
I started teaching, I started doing my podcast,
yeah.
and and then this was like an earlier podcast that I had before. And then little by little, like, my career started to become more specialized. Like, okay, now my stand-up is mostly like, only undocumented stuff. And then the thing that became kind of tough about that was because even local clubs now, like, okay, fine, the racist clubs out of town weren't having me, but then the local city clubs now only would book me on political comedian weekends. You know what I mean? So
Ah, okay.
now I'm not even. It's just, honestly, white people just start to put all these different rules in their head. Like if you ask a white comedian, could two women go up on the same show? They'll go, yeah, but not back to back. And you go, what the fuck does that make sense? They just think that, like, two women back to back is gonna ruin the show. You know what I mean? Or
Wow.
or if it's a Friday and Saturday night, you got to realize, right? Comedy clubs are businesses, right? So if on Friday and Saturday night they're gonna go see a guy like, who am I thinking of? Like Bert Kreischer. You know Bert Kreischer? He's this white guy. He talks basically all about getting drunk and fucking women in Russia, right?
Okay.
Very lowbrow humor. But his audience spends a lot of money. The club initially, when he's the headliner, will book like a feature or an opener. The club on a Friday or Saturday night is not going to book me because I'm problematic, because his crowd
To his
is
crowd.
his crowd, right?
Mm.
Most clubs Friday and Saturday night, if you look it up, the comedy club act is a very mediocre white person who is not really offensive. It might be sex jokes, but they're not. Now, when you have a comedian that's like specifically politics, like I don't know, when he was alive, like Paul Mooney,
Mm,
like,
mm.
he would be on a Thursday or a Sunday night, and every other comedian
Yeah.
around him is also a political comedian. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
becomes like I became isolated now. Now, even though my jokes are about like my undocumented mom, it's still a mom who's freaking me out and shit. That alone has put me now on the political category. So now I get booked even less, because now
Interesting.
I'm a specialty act now. I'm not just
Yeah.
a regular comedian anymore.
Wow. I never realized how much went into comedy clubs. Like, thanks for breaking that down for us. Because I know like business aspects of things, but not with this type of thing, like with comedies and dealing with that many people and crowds and being undocumented at that too. So that's insane. Like, so how did you do you still do stand up
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah, I do. Man, stand-up comedy is like, it's that girl I'll never stop loving. You know what I mean? Like
I
like I
love it.
want I
Okay.
want her to love me so bad. I
Yeah.
want her just to, like, honestly, like, as much, it's funny because, like, as much people are like, man, I love your TikToks, like, I love your podcast. I love I'm still like, check out my comedy, like, check out my stand-up comedy. Like, that's actually
Yeah.
like the thing that I want the most to pop off. And, like, because, like, I honestly, when I'm on stage, everything that people hate about me, or at least that I think people hate about me in the real world, it kind of all comes together on stage, like I'm over dramatic with my hands, but on stage it's fucking hilarious. I
Yeah.
exaggerate a lot when I'm telling stories. I use my face a lot. I'm very loud all the time. People, as a Dominican, they're like, mira, baja la voz, demasiado alto. I'm like, pero me gusta hablar así, coño, me gusta hablar así,
Yes.
But when I'm on stage, people are like, yeah, talk like that, be that, So on stage, like, everything that the world tells me, like, you're too loud, you're too obnoxious, you're too political to stop.
Yeah.
On stage, as long as I'm making people laugh, they
That's
let me
all that
say whatever
matters.
I want. And it's honestly, I love it. I love it so much. Even like I'm doing Zoom shows,
Hmm.
and I still like love seeing the people on Zoom laughing, And I'm like, I got you. Even from home, I got you. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. You know.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad you are. Because I only asked because you found so much success through TikTok, and I was just wondering if you were like allocating a lot more of that time towards building that, right?
Mhm.
But I want to talk about how you found have you like success through TikTok, but because you were on Instagram before, right? But then
Mhm.
you went on to TikTok, and that just elevated
Yeah.
your viewership, and then you even got into the Latinx, was it creator program?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Tell us all about that as well, and your experience, and what you like recommend for other creators like Latinx folks.
That was a fun experience. You know, I don't know if TikTok's gonna see this, but I'll be real with you. TikTok did kind of like the bare minimum for us. You
Mm.
know, they kind
Mm-hmm.
of just like gave us pamphlets and told us things to do that we were already all doing. So it
Yeah.
felt very empty, you know. The one thing I gotta tell Latinx people, man, is the one thing that I had to learn the hardest possible. Nobody's coming to save you. You know, you gotta find people within your own community and work with them. You know, you can't do it all alone. You know what I mean? But the mainstream path that's like laid out for people, it's a very white concept. You know, for us, it becomes very much like you got to write your own TV show, you got to produce your own
Mm-hmm.
thing. You know, you got to do it yourself and get your community to like you, and then do your best not to sell that thing to the white, Spotify when they come through. You know, because it's you know like I'm someone that I followed all the right steps. You know, like
Yeah.
I auditioned like every year when I did stand up comedy. There's this thing called the Montreal Comedy Festival where that's where every comedian wants to go to, and every year I auditioned, and I was great, but but managers and agents just thought maybe it wasn't my year, I wasn't ready. It's all these bullshits that and then you see the lineup of who is going up there, and the only Hispanic person that's going has like a very thick accent. He's like, "Hey, yeah, you know me, though. I'm from," and you're like,
Right. Right.
"Damn, yeah." They have such an idea of what we are that they don't fucking break that mold that they have, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the toughest thing about when I started doing TikTok and realizing even more of my old fan base fell off. White people who were following me who were fans. I don't like this undocumented shit. I don't like the fact that you just dedicate yourself to that. So it's like we have to do this for ourselves. You have to do it in a way where you're creating your own art. It's making you happy, and also it's like when you start doing your art and hanging out with your community, they inspire you, you inspire them. Like the art goes back and forth, because now I'm working through. This is kind of how like TikTok works. That it's not really money that you make, but it's opportunities. Like
Right.
a Latinx theater in Philadelphia found me through my TikTok, right? And they want me to teach Latinx high school kids how to do stand up comedy. So
Wow.
I'm very excited. We worked it out. This summer I'm gonna be teaching. I'm gonna be doing shows in English and Spanish for the community. Teach kids how to do that.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm super excited to do it, and I'm like I can't wait. It also give me a chance to do comedy every week, and I get paid, which
Right.
is awesome. Um,
Yeah.
but here's what's great: this whole theater, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a very rich theater. They have a lot of money, and they specifically cater to the Latinx community. The guy who brought me in for the job as a stand-up instructor, I told him, I was like, look, man, since I was a kid, I wanted to be like in theater, but I grew up in the hood, so we didn't have these theater programs. And the guy goes, "We have a program for like high school kids that I want to put you in." And I'm like, I'm a little old. He's like, "No, no, no, this is great. We teach you how to do, audio, visual. We do all these things." And he goes, "And after you finish the program, I can hire you as my production assistant." So
Wow.
I already did. I'm learning now. The first one I did, we did this beautiful production for mariachi, right? And the thing is
Yeah.
that this theater, like I was up in the sound booth, man, and we had cameras, we had sounds. It looked like we were putting on the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is for kids, but I'm getting the opportunity to go in there. And what I realized was everybody around me is Latinx, right? The people singing up front that we're putting the show for, they're singing in Spanish. They're singing, like Vicente Fernandez, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I made a lot of mistakes my first day there. But the beautiful thing was that I never felt stupid, that I never felt like I was going to get fucking thrown out of that place.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And the guy at the end of the day, Bill, he was like, "You did a great job, man. I can't wait to have you back next month." I signed up next month for 2 days so I can learn how to do more light and do more, more visual. So one day I can be in the sound booth by myself, putting on that show for these amazing Latin acts, right? And that's where I realized, like, yo, when you're in a space full of Latinx people and they're supporting you and you're supporting each other, you don't feel like a fucking loser like you do around white spaces all the time. White spaces make you feel like, oh, I'm gonna fuck up, So that's what I'm telling you. My piece of advice is like, find other Latinx people. Find out Latinx people who are willing to teach you, who are willing to help you grow, who want to see you do better, because then you don't feel so fucking like scared or make mistakes. And that's the thing what we all need to be able to do is make mistakes so we can get better.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's beautiful. Oh my God.
I had to be so perfect doing stand-up like my entire career, man. I'm not even fucking with you. That's one thing that makes me mad is that from the first time I got up on stage, I was good because I knew that I couldn't be even mediocre.
Yeah. And evidently, like you were great, and that opportunity just, it literally got like slashed, like stolen away from you, because the lack of representation
Exactly
in some conference room or something, right? And no one spoke up. Wow. Do you ever see yourself starting like a comedy club yourself? In the future?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would love that.
That's exactly. I want to have the first Latinx chain of clubs, man. Like Latinos are going to be we're going to be the majority by what, 2042 or something like that. That means there should be a comedy club chain for only Latinx people in Austin. There should be one, in Arizona. There should be one in LA. Like, I'm tired of these white men running these clubs. Tired of it.
Yeah, that's why I ask. Have you connected with like other folks, and other Latinx folks in the space as well, through like TikTok or any other means?
I have a lot of people that I met through different walks of life, that they've had the undocumented experience, and it kind of seems a little bit like like everybody's kind of ready to support me in something like that, because I do want to open up a comedy club specifically for like Latinx people. So I have had some people like, I would love to fund that. I'm actually I finished school in May for business administration. I'm learning how to like put like a business plan together. So my thing is, if I am going to approach my community to help me out with this, I want to make sure they know I'm not stealing their money. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm just learning now. Learning now.
That's great. No, I love it. And dealing with so much that you have, how do you even deal with like all the trolls and people that might not like your sense of humor or content, specifically people that are just like racist, right? Like there might be some racist people in your comments when you do your videos, and you get a lot of views on TikTok, so you get all types of people. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, no, I get a lot of racist trolls. I deal with it in two ways. One, I got a fantastic fan base that actually like comes protects me. Like, it's funny when like somebody goes like somebody else say something like, "Why haven't you gotten fucking citizenship yet, you fucking lazy bitch?" And somebody's like, "Oh, because when he was 19." And I'm like, "Yo, y'all watch that video? Like you came in like with the answer for me? Like, that's fucking amazing." So I have to sit back and let somebody else answer for me, because it's honestly, it's beautiful how much like I know about other undocumented people because they share a lot, and they know about me. So I'm like, yeah, I know what happened to him actually. So don't fuck with him. Yeah. The other way I deal with it is honestly like the constant like racism that I just felt in stand-up comedy. It just made me realize, like, as cheesy as it is, you're not for everyone. And if honestly, if you are for everyone, you are doing something wrong.
Then you're like catering to everyone.
You're catering,
right?
The greatest comics who were like controversial and like, and brought friction to this earth were not liked. Like, I go back to Paul Mooney, who was not liked. He white people hated him. George Carlin, for a lot of people, he was not liked. And one thing about George Carlin, he's the only comedian you notice this. The older he got, the younger his audience got. That doesn't happen to a lot of comedians.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Don Rickles at age 90 was reporting for fucking Betty White at 99. You know what I mean? But George Carlin, the older he got, the more he was like, fuck the system, fuck the establishment. And younger people were like, yeah, fuck the system, fuck the establishment, People like him now because he's dead, but not at the end. At the end, he was very anti-Bush, anti-war,
Yeah.
anti-oil. He was very all that.
Wow. All right. Well, listen, you have you're also doing some other projects, right? I want you to share that how those came about and what they mean to you specifically. Like you started your podcast now, and you're also doing stand-up shows.
Mhm.
So I want to know like when you have those shows and also what your new podcast is about and what your goal for all that is as well.
Yeah. Check out my podcast. Like you said, it's called My Undocumented Ass Podcast. I did it because I wanted to help other people laugh about what we've been through. Because one of the few gifts I have is I'm able to make people laugh. And what we find when I'm having these conversations with these other people is that so many times I'm like, oh fuck, that happened to me too. And we just start laughing. And a lot of times, I'll get messages like, yo, that thing you guys are talking about, that happened to me too. And it was fucking crazy. And it's just like, yo, literally, yo, once you start sharing, you start realizing like, one thing that I've always told myself that like people were like, no, you shouldn't say that about yourself. I always go, I'm not special. And that's beautiful because not special means that you understand other people's experience. That means you've had the same things happen to you. You know what I mean? That means you
Right.
both can be like, man, we're here. People who say, oh man, LeBron James, he's exceptional. Yeah, that's kind of lonely because he's among the few people who can relate to
At
that
the
group
top.
of
Yeah.
exceptionalism. You know what I mean? Like ordinary people, man, we have a lot of motherfucking ordinary people to relate to. So I'm ordinary, I'm basic, and all my friends that I meet are having the same experience, and that's been like the most rewarding thing about having this podcast. It's like, man, we are just part of this system, just regular folk, just part of the system.
Yep.
And that's been great to share with people and people who don't have that knowledge to start wanting to learn more. That's been so rewarding. And I if you want to know about my stand-up shows, you should just follow me on my undocumented ass on Instagram or TikTok because right now, like again, like comedy clubs aren't calling me, but what I'm very lucky is that like organizations are. So like I'm
Right.
performing for on Tuesday from home. I'm performing for this organization in Los Angeles that specifically helps
Wow.
undocumented kid goes to college. I got to go to Austin and perform for the Civil Rights Projects, which is all dedicated to the entire state of Texas to help undocumented people, get out of ICE facilities and be reunited with their families and find pathways to citizenship. And they brought me out, and it was honestly, I'm doing less shows but much more rewarding, spaces and better paying
Yeah.
too. If I can be honest with you, I mean,
Yeah,
I'll be
they
real with you.
got
I'll be real
these
with you. Yeah,
organizations, they got a big budget, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I have made it a little bit of a habit that if I make money doing these shows, I have to give a percentage to an organization that helps out undocumented people, or
Mm,
I donate a percentage back because it feels kind of dirty to be like I'm making money talking and joking about the system that I'm literally trying to fight. Like, you know what I mean? Like
right.
it's the system that other people are in a cage because of. I don't feel too well making money off of it. So I still try to like, give a percentage back because it feels dirty at times.
I love that. Yeah, no, thank you for all the work that you're doing as well. And if anything that we didn't touch upon that you want to mention, this is your time to do so. That maybe you want to speak to the audience and give some tips or just more about yourself. This is your time.
Um, just stay woke. Especially for a lot of Hispanic people, we really need to really educate ourselves on the system that we're up against. So that's just my thing. Just keep yourself informed, and also like I said, find your community,
Mm,
find an organization out there that's helping out other undocumented or immigrants something because there's strength in numbers. That's just something that I've learned in this. People always ask me, how are you so vocal about growing up undocumented and not afraid
right.
about being deported? And I go, honestly, the one thing that takes away some of the fear is the fact that I know a lot of people love me. a lot of people on TikTok who are, lawyers and doctors and nurses, and my partner who's a very, very loud white woman, and my friends and my family, they all know and they all love me and they know why I'm doing this. So if I always say, man, if one day, ICE ever comes and, pulls me by the collar, I'm not just gonna be thrown in a box and forgotten. I'm very lucky that
Yeah.
a lot of people make noise. And that's what you should realize. The more you share with people and the more you let them in, the more they love you, and the more they want to do for you if you're ever in trouble. So don't ever feel like you're alone. It's easy to shut yourself off from the world when this is happening to you.
Amen. Amen. Amen to that. Yeah. No, thank you so much, Che. I appreciate you
Absolutely.
coming on the podcast and sharing a lot about yourself and the things that you're doing. I hope it's an inspiration to many. I know just hearing your story, I learned a lot. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate having me on today.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a family or a friend and rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps tremendously in order to bring more awareness and educational resources to our community. For more information and to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram at Latinoamericaneo. And if you need more information and resources, you can visit my website, latinoamericaneo.org. I'm Kevin Munoz. This has been the Leo Podcast, and I'll see you next time. This podcast is not investment advice. I am not a qualified licensed investment advisor. All information on here, including any ideas, opinions, views, predictions, forecasts, commentaries, suggestions, or stock picks expressed or implied, are for informational, entertainment, or educational purposes only and should not be construed as personal investment advice. Conduct your own due diligence or consult a licensed financial advisor or broker before making any and all investment decisions. Any investments, trades, speculations, or decisions made on the basis of any information found on this podcast, expressed or implied, are committed at your own risk, financial or otherwise.